Now, ladies and gentlemen, the biblical Joseph was led by divine grace, as is also my life. In these 52 years, 54 years, I've dedicated myself obediently, loyally, faithfully, diligently to bringing these understanding. Joseph, the biblical one, spoke to nations. He's the only biblical character that I know who became a surrogate prime minister. He effectively came from a religious domain into the secular domain, which is exactly what my life is capable of doing, to emulate that biblical example. Now, how can I speak to these four figures which represent Britain, Europe, and the United States of America? Well, I've also written anthems, and anthems speak for a nation on the nation's behalf because it summarizes the nation's past, its present, and its aspirations for the future. And I've written four anthems to represent these four figures, to represent the surrounding nations of Britain, to equate to the biblical narrative when the biblical Joseph, after feeding the people of Egypt, also fed the surrounding nations, not because Joseph was a proficient administrator. That was less important. Same with me. I am less of an administrator than God's message, which is far, far more powerful and is able to feed the surrounding nations, which means Britain's surrounding nations are Europe and the United States of America. I do not speak to the rest of the world. I only speak to Britain, Europe, and America. I must make that very, very clear. But I can spread my message to the rest of the world. That's a different matter. Don't conflate the two aspirations. So I've written this beautiful anthem, which someone described as a hymn, and I'm very grateful. I know exactly who that person is. So I'll sing it to you. It's a rebirth, which is what is happening. People are crying out they've lost the country that they first loved. And it is not just because immigrants and not just because of the failure of multiculturalism. No, it is failure of the indigenous British people to sustain that legacy. And the most important person who can sustain that is a future Archbishop of Canterbury. That is why God has led me to this particular position now. And I hope the Prime Minister and all these other three figures will listen to what I'm saying and think about it. So the rebirth to land of hope and glory, which just harps back to empire. It is so uncomfortable. Blessed be our nation, wrought by heaven's decree, casting out injustice, chastened with liberty. Wide the consecration of their works and fame, where the sun did flourish, never known to set, left to us to cherish, be it not in vain. Once in the beginning, Adam and Eve gave birth to their sons and daughters, freedom of the earth. Some enforced in shackles, others knew only wealth. How can this injustice find in us redress? Only a new beginning make we an Eden for all. Spirit of our fathers, lend thy grace herein. We who now behold thee, mighty in thy works, gather from us bounty, shall thy works extend. Armed with faith and courage, facing the unknown, praising our Creator, worthy of mighty works. Blessed be our nation, wrought by heaven's decree. Is that act of virtue signalling to cancel our Stonehenge culture? Casting out injustice, chasing liberty through arts and science. It chastened us from the injustice of the Stonehenge culture, which is universal. It represents all the nations, white and coloured people, coloured by the hand of Almighty God. So I don't mind using that phrase. Why the consecration of their works and faith? It is the Church of England consecrating the wonderful works of the British Empire, of the British people. The invention that Britain came up with is immeasurable. Where the sun did flourish, never known to set. I've not known any poet that's managed to find the exact words to summarise the British Empire. I'm not arrogant, I'm very proud that the woman who saw this, I said she saw it's a beautiful hymn. It is a hymn, much more than an anthem. But the two together is much more powerful because you have the spiritual and you have the temporal power, left and right. Well, left to you and right to you as well. 5 if you annoy me. It should be left for us to cherish, something to be proud of, because it is going to make, if Donald Trump wants to make America great, he wants to listen to what I have to say, and then what Britain has to say when it goes through this tuition course. So I'm not the only one that's going to go up to him. I'm actually 11 days younger than him, so don't laugh. This next verse obviously talks about our beginning to Adam and Eve, and it is not, I'm not alluding to the allegorical Eden. That was to define a theological ideal, which I'll talk about later. So I'm talking about slavery, some enforced in shackles, others knew only wealth, obviously during the Victorian era. How to define injustice? Well, a new beginning through this tuition course, I hope, will help to create that new beginning. But the last line I like the most. We applaud our spiritual fathers because of the grace and the legacy they gave to us. But gather from earth's bounty shall thy works extend. When somebody said to me, oh, you mean all the earth's resources, who's thinking about iron and coal and all that? No, I'm thinking about people. People are the greatest resources of the earth. And armed with faith, I want to add to people, inspire a new sense of faith and belief in the future, which Britain achieved in the past. And I'm not going to place judgment on the immigration question, on questions of race. That I'll leave to one side for now. So I hope you see that that woman I showed this anthem to said, oh, it's a beautiful hymn. So here ends the second part, and I'll move on later into another talk. Thank you.